Hey there, and thank you for joining the New Believers Project again today. We've been exploring a series on the story of Gideon, and I hope it has been a blessing. I hope you've liked the video, you share. Remember to subscribe, remember to share with friends, and ask me questions if you have. Okay, so last week I started a section of the story which I said was to emphasize that it can be systematic and as well supernatural. And I said from the story of Gideon, I was going to mention two areas where it was systematic, but yet it was supernatural. But for today, allow me to take a detour to talk about something else, something as well profound in the story of Gideon. You see, the story of Gideon is probably popular if you have heard about it. What's popular to you is about the 300 soldiers, how Gideon won a battle with 300 soldiers. And another popular thing about this story was how God selected the soldiers. You see, in Judges chapter 7, we see that after Gideon had, turned at the altar of Baal, the people are now following him. You see, we explained last week that was seemingly natural, but he won the confidence of the people. That the first time he announced for people to come and fight, 32,000 people were willing to join his army. And that was God working through natural situations. But the story of Gideon is such that God eventually fought with just 300 people. And then there is a part of the story, if you read down in Judges chapter 7, God said to Gideon that you have a lot of people. I want to fight with just few people because I don't want the Israelites to think they won the battle themselves. And God asked them in the first time, okay, tell people who are scared to go back home. And 22,000 people went back. And God still said, they were left with 10,000. God said, you still have a lot of people. Okay, this is what you do. Tell them to go to the river and go and drink water. And some people knelt down. In other words, they squatted with their legs, or they knelt down and then just lapped the water with their tongue. Another group of people, they scooped the water with their hands and then lapped with their tongue. And I've heard commentaries or where some people have tried to explain that the symbolism of how they drank water was how God selected them. And since I read it, I've kind of felt like there is a fault to that kind of logic, to that kind of explanation, because some people said the people who scooped with their hands, that the reason why they were selected is because they showed that they were vigilant soldiers, because they were vigilant, unlike the ones that would have casted off their weapons and then they lapped with their tongue. I feel that's faulty, because even those who scooped with their hands would have at some point dropped the weapon. But not to argue, the reason, what I believe is a much more accurate way to think that why they were selected is the fact that there was nothing about the symbolism of how they drank water. I think the purpose of God bringing them to the river was just to reduce their number. It was not about how they drank the water. That God the main reason why God had to do that was because he wanted to drastically reduce their number to a ridiculous amount that whenever they hear this story like we're hearing now, you would not think for once that it was the children of Israel that did it by themselves. You see, in Judges chapter 7 verse 2, God said to Gideon, the Lord said to Gideon, you have too many warriors. You see, there are too many for me to give the Midianites into their hands, lest Israel vaunt themselves against me, saying, my own hand had saved me. You see, if I let you fight the Midianites, the Israelites will boast against me that they saved themselves by their own strength. So that was the purpose. That's what I believe was such that I think that if 9,700 of them scooped with their hands and lapped like a dog, and then 300 knelt down to lap like a dog, God would have still gone with the 300. So I personally believe that there is not a lot, that it wasn't about how they drank the water, but it was just God trying to drastically reduce the number so that the victory will go to him and to him alone. You see, and that's consistent with God. He does this thing by grace. He doesn't want anybody to boast. You see, that's consistent with the ways of God. You see, another lesson I want to expound upon on this chapter is, I said at the beginning that there are instructions for living. There are things you can go through in a lesson. Though the Bible is Christocentric, you can have lessons from the life of people that can instruct you as a leader, that can instruct you as as a business person. We see that in God. It is very possible. I mean, it's the God of wisdom. And there is such a lesson like that in the story of Gideon. And that's in Judges chapter 7 verse 2, which I just read. You see, you can imagine when Gideon called soldiers and 32,000 people showed up. Gideon must have been feeling himself, I'm such an influential man. 32,000 believe in my vision. But guess what? God said to Gideon, there are too many. Tell them whoever is scared, whoever is afraid should go home. You can imagine Gideon looking at God like, are you joking? Like, who is going to be scared? I mean, they would have come out because they were bold. But guess what? 22,000 people went back home because they were scared. Imagine God never said that, and 32,000 people are on the battlefield, and then 22,000 of them are scared of guns in our context, or 22,000 of them are scared. They are jittery when they say the enemy. They would have put Gideon's army in disarray. What I want to say here, the lesson here for me is that as a leader, as someone, maybe you're trying to lead a movement, you have a business, or you're trying to do something, it's not all the time that the numbers mean that everybody supports the vision. You need to be discerning enough to know that there might be people within the pack that don't really believe the vision. Be discerning enough. You might decide maybe you want to take them through a training to bring them up to speed. Or sometimes what this lesson does for you is that you know that sometimes you need to make the hard call, tell people to go. As a leader, you need this. You need this. Numbers are good. I'm not saying numbers are not good. The numbers are good. But there are times you need to know that there is such a thing as herd mentality. There are some people that are just scared because a lot of people are doing it. So if you are deceived to think that I have 32,000 people following me, they sure must have believed the vision. You would be wrong. And that's something we see. That's something we see in the life of Gideon that instructs our lives, that can give you wisdom as a leader, that you need to be discerning. Sometimes you need to make hard calls. Sometimes it is better for you to have 300 people that believe your vision than for you to have 32,000 people where 22,000 of them are scared. Herd mentality. So imagine you're going to go and challenge the status quo. You say, okay, let's get on the street. And everybody show up. Guess what? 22,000 of them, they just hear and they run. And you're wondering, and only you are in front. You're like, who sent me? Anyways, that's by the way. The lesson here is the fact that be discerning as a leader. You see this lesson from the story of Gideon, and I just thought to share because I feel it's very profound. I hope this blessed you. See you on the next episode of the New Believers Project.